guys, and welcome back to the channel. So a fairly brief video for the Grand 10 times 10 7-star supply drop. So if you are Paragon or Valiant player, you will get 10 7-star champions. If you are below that, you'll get 10 6-star champions with the 7-star Isophene in case you are Thronebreaker. But the basic idea is we get 10 7-stars or 10 champions, and in today's video we're going to kind of rate them in their general relevance and quality. Neither one of these champions, perhaps with the exception of one, is kind of like meta breaking, but there are quite a few useful ones. So what I think of these champions, the least useful champion I would call Spider-Man Classic. You really hardly see him anywhere except used by a handful of enthusiasts. In order to unlock his full defensive utility, you need him duped and quite high sig, which unfortunately I do have. But even then, any given await counter will destroy him. Any champion with, fairly decent defenses or just playing fairly carefully and slowly will destroy him. He does have a Wade, which is annoying to deal with, but if you can deal with the Wade, you can deal with the Spider-Man, and there are far stronger defenders to invest in. And offensively, he's kind of alright if you can be uber aggressive with his tons of taunts, interacting with the Necrity, and then him potentially being able to put up some big numbers pending your crit RNG. But again, Science Class quite stacked, and ultimately I hardly see this guy anywhere used by anyone, invested by anyone aside from the die-hard fans. So next up, besides the Spider, at spot number 9 I'm going to put Gwenpool for now. And I hope that changes. The reason for Gwenpool placement here is because, well, she's extremely outdated. And even as 6-star, obviously, she fell behind a relatively long time ago. Gwenpool is one of those champions we kind of forgot exists in the game until we saw her again, because, she didn't exist as a 7-star, and as a 6-star, nobody really rank 5'd and ascended her, and you couldn't see her in any showcases, in any metas, so on and so forth. Because again, there are many skilled champions that do what she does, just about as well or even better. She is one of the very few champions in skill class that does have power control with the energy weight. But overall, we're going to have to see whether her damage holds up, whether her matchups work out. And she does have some very, very cool synergies, so I'm sure we're going to see some very cheesy videos with her. But overall, I do not foresee that much value in Gwenpool that I can predict. Anything can happen. Maybe a 7-star she scales very well and her damage output holds up, but because of the lack of relevance information or data, I would mark Gwenpool down as like an unknown and a cautious spot number 9. Spot number 8 is going to go to Gambit. Gambit can do some cool things. I actually like Gambit and see him significantly more valuable than, the champions below. And if Gambit's level 2 crits, which you can kind of pseudo-ensure with the relic, then he'll be quite cool. He has 0 defensive value, obviously, but we have seen people do rank him up initially because he was, one of the few mutant options that we got from the get-go pretty much. And also, his damage output could be quite decent. He does have that damage back bypass mechanic on his medium hits, and the concussions on level 2, which can make him somewhat useful. He's definitely not a bad call. It is a bit thin. Well, you do need to amp him up, and it's kind of like level 2 or bust type of situation with him in damage department. He can still stun lock, which can be relevant at times, and therefore, yeah, even though Gambit is in spot number 8, I do find him slightly more proven and valuable than in champions beforehand, and that's okay. So spot number 7, I'm gonna give to Guillotine 2099. Now, Guillotine 2099 was one of the Kabam originals and was meant to be Aegon 2.0. Needless to say, that never happened. Even the content that she kind of got released just before and was hyped for the most, the Abyss of Legends, she kind of sucked in because of the level special 3 requirement to, start with the 100 combo. And as a ramp-up champion, that, again, it's similar story to Sentry. There's no real place for her in questing. You don't want to ramp her up. You can use her in very specific challenge fights and Eternity of Pain and stuff like that. She is somewhat of a solid defender. She can be quite finicky. You can play around her though, but you know, still in between her special 1 messing with your power bar, special 2 heal reversing you somewhat, which can be quite annoying as a Battlegrounds defender at times, but in general, you hardly see her really anywhere. Again, she does have a cult following, and I respect those players, but for most players, you just can't be bothered ramping her up all the time and making sure that you carry over the combo. She is, she's one of those champions that's, you know, very, very good on paper, but without like everyday solid practical use, in my opinion. Can come in handy at times because she's still a robot. She has her immunities. As I said, she's very good for challenge fights. She's a solid champion to have for when you need her. But my approach to champions like that typically is keeping them at rank 1 and taking them up to rank 2 as 7 stars if and when I need them. And Guillotine perfectly fits that bill. Like, I do have a rank 1 Guillotine 2099. If I'm gonna have any meaningful need for her, I'm gonna take her to rank 2, which could happen. Next, spot up, and spot number 6, and I'm gonna give that to Jabari Panther. Jabari Panther, I kind of feel like she's that close to being good. Obviously, she's kind of overshadowed now by Shield, that kind of has just about everything she does, because she can put on, like, you know, decent amount of bleeds. She has a very reliable shrug off, cleanse mechanic, and yeah, she can, you know, hit harder and crit more, but unlike Shield, Jabari has, you know, significantly less defensive value. She's significantly more fiddly and flimsy than Shield is, and overall I kind of feel like Shield has replaced Jabari Panther in the game, but you can definitely do very cool things. She does have more straight out of the gate damage output than Shield. In the right matchup, she can ramp up quite fast, which is the reason why I have placed her above Guillotine and stuff like that, because she at the very least can compete with the meta options, and there are places and times for her to be used. So I do think that Jabari Panther overall does have more potential than the champions before to be useful more frequently, and that she is somebody that you could actually get, you know, pseudo or daily use out of. So that's why Jabari is in spot number 6. I have actually been pondering of taking mine up to rank 2 as well, just because I kind of like her. Next up, we have to go back to Iron Man Fintiwar. Iron Man Fintiwar, I am giving spot number 5. Obviously, he's primarily a defender, and if you have no interest in any alliance or alliance wars or, you know, battlegrounds, then Iron Man, you know, would be significantly lower for you on the list. However, if you do factor in a fairly good defensive value, I do consider Iron Man Fintiwar to be a very underrated defender. In fact, most of the time when I do see Iron Man Fintiwar rank 3 in Battlegrounds decks, I often tend to ban him because he is sneakier than you'd think. Even if you have a counter, you often end up taking some block damage. He delays the fights fairly decently long. And Cosmic Lask has been kind of getting screwed by a lot of the metas that are, you know, punishing or limiting the buffs, as well as he's a type champion that can, you know, waste quite a bit of time with his special spam. And yeah, often even if you do have a solid counter for him, you're just not quite fast enough or manage to win the fight against him in Battlegrounds still. In Alliance War, he's still like one of those defenders that you do encounter fairly often. He's somewhat of a staple too. So offensively, he's a ramp-up champion, and he's like a perfect definition of a champion that I prefer much more than a pure defender in the game, where he is a ramp-up champion. It is very kind of like pick your fights and is not going to be using him daily type of situation. He's good for longer form content. He's good for some specific challenge modes where you can actually ramp him up during the fight. He does have a good amount of utility offensively, which again is hindered behind very slow starting damage, but then you kind of improve upon it significantly. But overall, he does have, you know, a fair spot in the game as a defender first. And therefore, I do think he represents more value. But if you do not care about defense, then, you know, disregard displacement. And then next up, spot number 4 goes to Storm Pyramid X. Storm Pyramid X, I would describe as a solid champion. I'm going to be real with you. I prefer OG Storm in just about everything aside from the defensive aspect, because she can stall out fights as well, especially if she gains some extra power. You know, you do want to bait out those level 1s because level 2 decks is very tricky and you can, you know, get punished very hard for it. And then, you know, level 1 takes a bit of time too, and her glancing, that also can slow the fights down quite significantly. And then offensively, she can answer a fair amount of skilled champions decently well. She's supercharged in the nodes that emphasize the special attack damage as well. There are times and conditions when she can be an absolute cheese guard master. And at the very least, she's going to have, you know, a solid option placed in a game. Primarily, again, relying on the special attack damage. So, yeah, I am going to put Dawn Pyramid X in spot number 4 because she still has, you know, fair defensive value, but also a fair offensive value, which I kind of value over Iron Man Infinity War's good defensive value to, you know, somewhat minimal offensive value. Next up, spot number 3, I'm going to give to Vox. Because Vox School, I actually like him. I took him into rank 2 quite recently, and he's quite cool. I like his mechanics where he can stack up his precisions and, you know, fuel his own abilities with that. I like, you know, obviously a ton of dot and degen damage. It is, you know, a bit kind of like scary or AI dependent how you can play him, because if AI refuses to throw special attack, you can be, you know, all of a sudden kind of like majorly screwed over. And you kind of do feel like you're dancing on the edge with Vox, and you always feel, at the very least I feel, slightly uncomfortable using him in serious situations where, you know, please, you know, AI, throw that special, come on, like, I need to get that opening, you know, come in for an intercept or something. But it's undeniable he has fair bits of utility. You know, he can bypass that mess, and he can bypass that auto block. He has access to tons of buffs and debuffs, tons of degen damage. He has his immunities, and yeah, he's quite a cool character. The reason why he's third, not second, is because I feel like Wiccan kind of is a champion that comes in handy often. Like, Wiccan often, like, there come these specific nodes where we can just completely cheese them with his neutralize and incinerating opponents when he prevents the buffs. Then there are these very specific matchups like null bosses when we can immediately get a surge in popularity. Then his immunity to reverse controls, and, you know, immediately kind of improved his use in Necropolis as well. He's going to be one of the reverse control immune champions as well for that, just to tackle with that boss easier. And then again, you know, there are these specific metas, these specific fights where he just does crazy good things. Overall, in a plain view, I do find him somewhat underwhelming, quite flimsy, and there are definitely better Mystic options. But, you know, time and time again, he can be elevated to a better position. Like, for instance, he is a solid Serpent counter. He's not the greatest, for sure, there are better ones, but, you know, when your options are get screwed by Serpent or counter him well, not great, you're gonna pick Wiccan. And yeah, so I'm not the biggest fan of Wiccan myself, but I do have like a maxed out 5-star and a rank 2 7-star, and I don't regret those rank ups because I have always gotten my fair use out of them. And the top champion, again, speculatively, is Isophine, because Isophine does seem to be a very solid Serpent counter once you do get her duped. Her abilities do put her more in line to be somebody more present in the game. I'll put it like that. We do not know exactly how well she's going to do in the game, but we can predict that she ought to do, you know, well enough. Better than most of the champions in this list. Maybe Vox and Wiccan I can see getting, like, you know, more use in future. Maybe. But, you know, if everything goes as predicted, that'd be Isophine. So that's it. Let me know what you guys think. And I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have